Excellent. Hello, everyone. You have arrived at the final synchronous event of this year's Agnes Scott Writers Festival, which by now you know is the longest continuously running literary festival in the Southeast. My name is Nicole Stammet, and I am Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of English at Agnes Scott. As we turned 50, we have celebrated all week long with many different kinds of events, from readings and roundtables to archived events and general discussions. It has also been such a treat for us to be able to welcome back two Writers' Festival favorites, distinguished guests, poet Rita Dove and playwright Jacqueline Goldfinger. The schedule is here for you in case you want to see what we've been up to. We plan to post everything online when we have a chance to see what it is that we've actually recorded and where they are and get our feet underneath us. It has been a whirlwind. We also hope you'll take a look at Karis Books' virtual book booth, which has information about how to purchase some of the works featured this week. I will put that link in the chat in just a moment. And while it's the last synchronous event, it isn't the last event, because starting at midnight tonight, you can see the Georgia premiere of Jacqueline Goldfinger's play, The Arsonists. It is streaming on Showtix4U, which you can see on calendar.agnescott.edu. We are so excited. This will be available from midnight tonight until midnight on Saturday. David Thompson.
Actually, it dropped at 12:01 today, so you can see it right now. But we'd like you to watch the great playwright we're about to introduce, and it will be available until Sunday becomes Monday at midnight on Sunday. So you've got
Wonderful.
the whole weekend.
The whole weekend. Well,
the whole weekend.
As I was telling everyone earlier, my husband and I shared a fortune cookie. And the fortune cookie fortune says this coming Saturday will be an exciting time for you. And it's because we are watching The Arsonists. So we can't wait. But yes, before that, we are so thrilled to have back with us a reading from Jacqueline Goldfinger, extraordinary writer and teacher who has been also our Writers' Festival Writer in Residence this week, teaching a class on contemporary plays and playwriting to a group of very lucky students. We have a couple of reminders. We recommend using Speaker View to get the most out of this event. Alternatively, you can pin Jackie Goldfinger using the 3 ellipses in the top right of the box that we are all in. And if you have questions, which we hope you do in the question and answer section, please either use the raise hand feature or type your question into the chat box. So I am going to stop my screen share and turn things over to the wonderful Dr. David Thompson, Annie Louise Harrison Waterman Professor of Theater, who will give an introduction.
It's always nice to be called wonderful, so thank you very much. No less a writer than the legendary lyricist and librettist Oscar Hammerstein II wrote that if you become a teacher, by your pupils you'll be taught. In no uncertain terms, that describes my relationship with our guest author and 50th Writers' Festival Writer-in-Residence, Jacqueline Goldfinger. She was the first student I met at Agnes Scott. On a crisp, clear January morning in 1998, I was preparing for the interview for the position I now hold, and I saw that my schedule indicated that a student named Jackie would serve as my guide. I left my residence hall guest room to find her waiting for me in the adjoining corridor. Naturally, she was reading. As we strolled to Evans' dining hall, she struck me as very astute in her observations and very determined to make her wishes known. In that moment, she taught me that I would need to up my game in order to survive at the college. The fact that she presented her thoughts with quiet charm and perfect decorum taught me another lesson, namely that appearances can be deceiving. In fact, I don't believe I ever again witnessed demure Jackie. Surely a theater professor would recognize the use of characterization or a mask in relationship to a setting or situation. Yes, she had taught me a bonus lesson: to trust my instincts and not to abandon my training. During our brief couple of years on campus together, she taught me numerous other lessons. Our many arcane campus rituals and traditions, along with guidance in which to cherish and which to avoid. The location of the best vending machines, and yes, we did have those in many convenient locations once upon a time. And where to locate tools and crafting supplies that may or may not have already been claimed by others. She also taught me that although this is an honor code campus, one should not assume that leaving your office door open while teaching classes is a good idea, lest you return to find that your browser's homepage has been changed to a site whose name would be censored by the New York Times. As time passed and Jackie began charting her own course, the lessons became much deeper and far richer, but also easier to describe. Follow your passion. Learn from great artists. Build a career. Understand the business side. Challenge yourself. Try new forms. Remain fearless. Jackie has moved from original plays to adaptations to special commissions to choral librettos. She is currently working on an opera libretto with composer Melissa Dunphy, and this fall will see the publication of her textbook, Playwriting with Purpose. And if anyone knows how to write with a purpose, it is a playwright who has literally seen her plays developed and produced in theaters across the country. Alaska's Perseverance Theater, the Seattle Public, the Kansas City Rep, Orlando Shakespeare. The list also includes iconic venues such as the Kennedy Center, the McCarter Theater, and the wonderful off-Broadway Barrow Street Theater nestled in the heart of New York City's Greenwich Village. I haven't even mentioned the international work in London and Lisbon and New Zealand. Along the way, she's been nominated for the most important awards in playwriting, including the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize and the Weisberg Award. She has received the Smith Prize, the Barrymore Award, the Philadelphia Critics Award, and the prestigious Yale Drama Prize for her play Bottlefly. That award also included a reading at the National Theatre in London and a surprise bonus, an invitation to afternoon tea from legendary playwright Carol Churchill. And we will celebrate our guest's work ourselves with the Georgia premiere of her play The Arsonist, currently streaming through the weekend. So with that, I am pleased and honored to welcome back to Agnes Scott's Writers Festival my pupil and my teacher, Jacqueline Goldfinger.
Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful introduction, David. I'm really glad that you have positive nostalgic memories about me being a pain in the tuchus. Because I was. But it was such a pleasure to have David as a professor, both in the rigor of the academic work, but also because he understands something. And I think this is a part of Agnes Scott's broader culture, which is that women need to find their own voices rather than be told what their voices are. And so a great deal of what I am today is a credit to Agnes Scott, because you let me try out a lot of different voices until I found my own. And I will always be grateful for that. So today I'm going to read one long piece. It's about 12 minutes from a new one-woman show called Devil's Waltz, which is a Southern Gothic murder mystery that I'm writing as an audio play. You may have noticed that the theaters are not running right now, which is a problem for someone who makes a living from the theater. And so during this crazy COVID time, part of it has just been spent surviving and raising the kids. But two of the things that I did were, one, write a textbook, which David mentioned, called Playwriting with Purpose, which you can pre-order anywhere now. And it was, I've been teaching now for 10 years, and I agree, your students are absolutely some of your best teachers. And that book gave me, people have been asking me to write a book, and so COVID kind of gave me the time to sit back and do that since everything was closed. And then the other project I've been working on is there are a number of theaters that are now producing audio plays. And what they want from audio plays is something that's not quite a novel or fiction, but is not quite a play either, because people need to be able to see the pictures in their mind without seeing it on stage. So these audio plays are striking a very delicate balance between the two. So I thought I would read you for the first 10 minutes from Devil's Waltz, which is an audio play that I am working on. And I wanted to send a shout out thank you and show the picture of Amanda Schoonover, who is a wonderful actress that I've been working with during this project. Mandy is like 4'8" of dynamite. And you think she's very demure until she looks at you with this intensity and you realize she could be the devil. So she's a great fit for this project. So thank you, Amanda Schoonover. And there's her headshot in case you want to think about her while I read this piece. All right. The Devil's Waltz, a new Southern Gothic audio play. Scene 1. The sounds of a storm. When Emmy went missing the day before the hurricane, everybody's too busy preparing for the storm to notice her gone. Everybody but me and the man that killed her, that is. I could hear the banging of nails from my room at the Osprey Inn Hotel and Motel out on the 10 Interstate. Plywood and driftwood and plasticine hauled up and hammered in over the windows on Main Street. Over at the grocery and Hemlock's Cafe. Outside Jake's Automobile Repair, which sells meth at the back, which nobody ever stops because Jake's brother Mac never had a real purpose for himself. And in selling meth, he finally found his place on this planet. Thank Jesus. At the end of the block, Narcissus Books is being boarded up with the speed of a dolphin. Narcissus shares space with the Doc's clinic because Doc runs both. 1 minute, you're getting your temperature took. The next, Doc rings you up for the sale of some lusty lady historical novels with titties on the cover. It's all very efficient. Even though our little town is quite a ways inland, you never know when the great storm is going to come and wipe you right off the map. So, like fools and gods, we prepared for the free will of nature. Maybe it was coming this time, just for us. Later, they'd say this storm was nothing of a popper. They'd say it was a sweet tea break in the middle of a relentless summer. They'd grumble about the work of covering the windows. But that's before folks realize Emmy's gone. Once the disappearance of our fair-haired girl gets around, everyone forgets all about windows and begins to wonder if the lies her grandfather had been feeding her for 18 years had finally come home to roost. But that dark and stormy night isn't where my story of Emmy begins. My story begins with 2 chickens on the loose, a church lady with a purple wig, and my mama being laid to rest again. Originally, Mama had been laid to rest 6 years ago at the corner of the Rowley Boys' land and the old Highway 14, which isn't much of a place in and of itself, just some old rocks and dirt piled atop the rails of the old Southern Whiskey Neat Railroad line. There's not even a cemetery there, really. But Mama never took much with church folks' ways. She wanted to be buried in that spot, and she wouldn't hear another word about it. When the Rev asked her why, she says that's the very spot the devil's gonna waltz by when he passes through Monroeville, Florida. And so that's where she's gonna see him and tell him to spit on my daddy when he gets back to hell. No one ever accused her of being subtle. Or being in real true love with daddy, for that matter. Their relationship was more than a cash transaction, but less than an eternal romance. The railroad property been sold to 7-Eleven, and the railroad spot's been fitted for 4 brand new gas pumps and a Slurpee machine, So Mama's body has got to go in the name of commerce and by order of the county health commissioner, who didn't know she was buried there in the first place. Mama was one for secrets. She always said she got that from me. And now you're going to say, but what in creation has that got to do with the day Emmy went missing and the hurricane about to blow and her murderer may or may not be about to get away? Here's the thing, y'all. You can't know that thing without knowing this thing first. I promise. Cross my heart and hope to die. Stick a needle in an old bird's eye. Because them 7-Eleven folks sent a Yankee down from Atlanta to supervise the construction, and he ended up one of the suspects in little Emmy's disappearance. But getting back to the cool morning and the bulldozer standing by, that morning when they'd finally dug out a good-sized hole and hit Mama's everlasting bedstead, the coffin so old and so cheap, it cracked right down the center. As it was lifted past layers of sand and soil and grit, out of the crack poured what's left of Mama in her Sunday best, like the yellow goo in that pot them witches stirred in that old Shakespeare play. That one's about murder too, I think. Didn't none of them big hearty construction boys have the stomach for yellow goo that used to be an irritable non-believer in a polyester print dress? In fact, most of them lost their lunch over it. It was like morning after New Year's at that railroad corner. Mama would have liked that. Those disturbing her everlasting rest sicken up all over the graves next door to hers. Because the 7-Eleven hadn't just bought the corner. They'd also bought the Rowley Boys field next to it. And when I say that field's the most haunted place of land outside of Andersonville jail, I'm telling the most truth I told in all my life. There were too many graves to count and too many dissatisfied spirits. They say the Rowley family been murderers for hire longer than they've been farmers, and better at it too. The Rowleys couldn't grow a single good crop between all the generations put together, but they killed a ton of folks, some that deserved it, some more questionable, all of them truly dead. And most of them burned in pyres, or bones picked clean by crows, or chopped to pieces and buried in that very field. Neither the preacher nor the sheriff visited. The boys were that fearsome. In fact, that's why they were always referred to as the Rowley Boys. In all the generations going back to the Revolution, they've been Rowley Boys living and working in that part of the country. Them Rowleys been drowning their baby girls in the creek for so many generations that they forgot there's a law against it. A girl's weakness could expose the family. It's a moral imperative to cut them down. It keeps the family safe, so Rowley tradition decrees. Most folks say traditions got to be kept. I say maybe there's some of them so rotted through they most best end. But all this is why I began my story of Emmy with Mama's second coming, because the first suspect in Emmy's murder was the new Yankee builder, and the second suspect was the last remaining Rowley boy, Avis Humphrey Rowley, who didn't never marry, but did sell off the family land to 7-Eleven, knowing good and well what haunted it, but not giving a damn. So just to keep count, we got a disappeared then dead Emmy and two of the three prime suspects in our story now. And I even hadn't gotten to the church lady or the chickens yet. End of scene 1. So I don't know, like I've got pieces of that one. So that was brand new. I got pieces of that one. I rewrote part of it yesterday out on the front lawn in front of Maine. And so I'm really excited to see where that one goes and also to see how these audio plays turn out this summer that so many theaters are doing. I think in general, they're going to be really interesting. So David mentioned my play, Bottlefly. Bottlefly is a play that I wrote that based on some folks I knew in the Everglades and some communities that I know in the Everglades that are in between kind of contemporary everyday life and living the way that they used to live 50 years ago. And a lot of it investigates these struggles that these folks have. And so what the play is available at any bookshop. It's published by Yale Press. And so I'm going to do a monologue from the character of a young woman in the play. And this young woman kind of lost her family young, and she has kept this doorknob in her pocket for years now. And so in this monologue, we learn why she kept the doorknob, and we also learn what happened when she fell out of the boat today. And so this was performed by Brett Ashley Robinson in Philadelphia, another really just brilliant Philadelphia actress. If you ever have a chance to work with Brett, I highly recommend her. And I was lucky enough that she was the original performer for this monologue. My doorknob, a reminder of another world, an escape hatch to Grandma's bedroom when they came to get me after she died, her sunset glory. When they came, I couldn't stuff my pockets with her records or her lace tablecloth or the picture of her son long dead in Iraq. I ran to her bedroom, slamming against each corner, something, somewhere, a rabbit hole, a black hole? Nothing. Fuck you, Lewis Carroll and Doctor Who. So when they dragged me out by my feet, screaming like when I was born to a new life, a failed APGAR score, when they dragged me out, I grabbed the bedroom doorknob and they pulled me so hard, popping my shoulders, leaving stretch marks on my waist, that the crystal knob of the door came off in my hand. I shoved it into my pocket before they saw and asked and wanted to sell it to pay off Grandma's hospital bills. But today, Auntie, today when I fell out of the boat, water breaking over me, heralding, I reached for that doorknob in my pocket to conjure her, her place, her smell, her time, the safety of her. And it was gone. I reached further into the water, down beneath the sand, the soil. I forced my fingers down through the roots of the cypress trees and scared away the egrets. I reached beneath the beneath, fit between grains of sand so small they sang to one another. But it was gone. And that's when I tripped and fell off the boat in the seeking of it. Thank you. And that was performed by Brett Ashley Robinson in Philadelphia. The next piece is actually, if you folks don't know, there is a newish online service called the New Play Exchange. And on the New Play Exchange, for a subscription of like $20 a year, you can read plays from contemporary playwrights all over the country. It's really phenomenal. It's great for readers. It's great for people who want to learn more about new plays. And so the most of my plays are on the exchange, but I just wanted to give that a little promo, newplayexchange.org. And you can read as many new plays as you want. And the next piece I'm going to read was actually discovered through the New Play Exchange by a theater company, which is pretty cool. And then the theater company produced it. The next play is called Click. It's produced by Simpatico Theater. Excuse me one moment. Here is our beautiful, beautiful cast, which we were able to get in one round of performances before COVID hit. And in Click, it's about a community, college community on a big college campus, and the party date rape at a fraternity house. And the woman who performed Fresh is Lexi Green. She is the one in the center. She is fantastic. And so she performed this monologue from Click. In the far distance, seemingly in the far distance, I hear the click of camera phones and a Shakira ringtone. Click, 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 click. The sounds come closer, becoming clearer, and then I start to feel pressure clawing through the dense mist of beer and pills. Then the monstrous pounding that I hear inside of me before I feel it. At first, it sounds like click, 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 click. But then it melts into searing pain and sounds as they bleed into one another, chants and clicks and spilled beer and slaps on my ass. The pain ripping, I know I'm dead, I'm dying, I just wish I'd die faster. Party music, vomit, slaps, baseline laughter, chants, moans smeared across one another. My head out a window, there was a toilet and a tub, but the window was first. The sounds of praying to die, and I'm here in America where student safety is priority one. And when they are done, they just walk away like anywhere else in the world, except now it's seen. Sometimes you want to be invisible and they won't even allow you that. Click, click, we're here. Click, click, we're done. Click, click, I hate that fucking sound. And the play is actually based on an incident in Canada. And later there was another one in California where the fraternity actually streamed the gang rapes on their channels, on their Facebook channels, which was wild and insane. Wild and insane. And then I know we're going to do a Q&A, so I was going to finish up with a little more of my bizarre humor. I recently wrote a play called Babel. And in Babel, it's, if you like shows like Black Mirror, if you know the play, Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go is a great example. It's a futuristic play where often people think they are in utopia, but it asks questions of what is the cost of utopia. And this one is currently up for the Lambda Literary Award for Drama this year, which I'm very excited about. We'll learn what happens in June. But for now, this is a picture. This is another one where we just got a run of one production in before COVID hit. And this is a production at Unicorn Theater in Kansas City. And the woman who's sitting at the table, this is her dream. She is trying to decide whether or not she wants to have a baby in this futuristic world. They screen embryos in utero for all kinds of genetic diseases. And you have to, and it asks the question, like, if you could know everything about your child, at least what the percentage likelihood is, would you do it before they were born? And if you knew what they were capable of, could you ever really train them and raise them for the best in themselves and fully love them because you would know what they were capable of? And in this play, you have to decide whether or not to get your embryos certified. They have a certain DNA makeup, and that brings up all kinds of moral and ethical questions for many communities. But the woman at the table is trying to make the decision, and the stork in the nightclub doing the comedy set has been implanted as a chip in her mind to try and get her to not do the certification. So I know it's a little complicated. I apologize for that, but hopefully you'll enjoy the monologue. Great. Oh no. Babel. And this is another one that's on the new Play Exchange, if people want to take a look at the full play. The stork tells a story about his grandfather. Maximilian the Stork the Sixth was a fine stork. Long, elegant legs, a beak that couldn't be beat. Every baby wanted to be carried by him. He would wrap them so gently in silk fabric, and the color of their choosing, none of that pink, blue, gender stereotype bullshit. but he had an undiagnosed heart condition. And when they finally discovered it, it was too late, too far gone to fix it. But he wouldn't stop. Carrying babies and handkerchiefs and looking ridiculous was his favorite thing to do. And he felt strong and sure, no matter what those doctors said. And one night, he's carrying one of those kids over the ocean. His heart condition kicks in and his heart stops. And he drops that baby into the ocean. It drowns. Then he drops into the ocean after it and he drowns. 2 lives gone like that. When they pulled the baby's body out of the water, she was still clutching her pacifier in her hand and her mouth was open like she was still screaming for life, for a future she would never have due to Grandpa's heart condition, screaming for a mother whom she would never suckle and her partner whom she would never meet. So think about that. Think about, you don't want to do the certification. You want to take on society. You want to take on nature and nurture and the fucking genetic code itself. You may not just be killing your baby. You may be killing someone else's. We got to get the bad shit out of our genes, man. The heart conditions, the behavioral conditions, the whatever it happens to be. Get it gone. This is the only way. End of monologue. She does decide to keep the baby in the end, even though she can't get it certified. Just everything's okay. The baby's fine. Everything's good. Thank you so much for Agnes Scott for having me here. Before we just open it up for Q&A, I just will show you, this is the book that'll be coming out this summer that you can pre-order now. It's called Playwriting with Purpose, a guide and workbook for new playwrights. I was lucky enough to have the tremendous author Octavio Solis write the foreword. And that's actually a picture of Mandy and one of my other friends, Anita, who were in a different production of Babel on the cover. It's nice to have friends that you can take with you. It's lovely. Awesome. So thank you so much. Do we have questions in the chat? Is that what we're doing next? All right. Oh, thank you to David for putting the access instructions to the arsonists in the chat, and then also to Nicole for putting additional links in the chat. You guys rock. Did you write this story yourself? Mina, did you write this story? Did writing this story make you discover anything about yourself? Was that the first one, the Devil's Waltz one?
Yeah, but I'm curious about all of them. What you learned from your writing.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the things, the Southern Gothic genre is one of my favorite to write in, mainly because it's cuckoo. Like, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but Floridians, we're not known for our sanity or stability. It's not our strong suit. Florida man is real. And so one of the things that came up when I was writing Devil's Waltz was, although Monroeville, Florida is a fake place, it's kind of based on a little town, was I didn't really realize how screwed up it was. And that, like, I did realize, Mina, how far I had come, because I've just had so much more experience with the world now than growing up there. It was, I did have moments where, I don't know that I learned something about myself, like in a deep, deep way, but I did have recognition of, oh my gosh, I've come so far. Like there are definitely things that I thought were completely normal growing up that weren't. And that was a fun discovery to make, and to think about how Florida culture really has influenced all my life. It was incredible. When we did Click about the events in Canada, that was really like, first of all, I felt really glad going to Agnes Scott, but also like the fear that these college students live in, especially when attackers on campus are allowed to stay in class, when they are, after they are accused, or after, when they're going through the legal process, and just kind of that deep ongoing fear that re-terrorizes, especially the women who are usually the victims in those cases, really made me think much more deeply about trauma. And I learned a lot about trauma during that process. And during Babel, the futuristic one, it's fascinating. In fact, the AMA, the American Medical Association, has issued an editorial about this type of research, because America is the Wild West for it, because every other country has put very strict research parameters on DNA, looking at DNA in infants and what that means and what information you can give people, and we have not. And when I had my own kids, I was like, do I want to have all this testing? And I decided, no, we're just gonna let it roll. But yeah, it's learning a lot about the world and myself, which is one of the things I love about writing, is that I go out because I think I'm going to learn something about the world, and I do, but then it always impacts the choices that I make, which is fascinating. Thank you, Mina. Funny and riveting. Thank you so much. It's an early draft. Like, we're just figuring things out. I also thought it'd be good to read something that was not polished, because I think that sometimes we hear all of these wonderful polished readings, and I love them. Like, I love going to them, but then it can seem very daunting to write. And so it's like, I just want to show you guys that, like, first drafts with weird things happening and like way too much backstory, and that's okay. Like, that's what the process looks like. It doesn't come out in that polished form. So I hope that that empowers some folks to know it doesn't come out in that polished form. You can be sloppy and gross and messy. That's fine. That's really a good place to be for a first draft. The minute you said Florida, I went, knew it. Yeah, I mean, like, we're on brand. We are on brand, folks. No one has committed to their brand more than the great state of Florida. Just saying. It's true. How long did you live there, and how do you think it influenced your writing? I was born and raised there, so I lived there until I came to Agnes Scott when I was 18. And it definitely influenced my writing, especially I think my sense of humor, because we are known by like Carl Hyacin and like kind of crazy off-kilter humor writers. Dave Barry's from Florida. You know, that is, so I, for sure, like my sense of humor and walking that line of it's grotesque, but it's also funny, but you shouldn't talk about it, but we're going to do it anyway. That for sure is very Floridian. And then I think that I learned how to appreciate the bizarre. I'm not, you know, and I find this even in everyday life, that there's sometimes in certain places I've lived, homogeny is very, like, that's the accepted way. You know, when I was living in LA and going to grad school, like, you know, LA is all about here's what is in, and this is the homogenous thing that everyone is doing, and you have to do. Shockingly, I did not fit in those boxes. I know you're amazed and surprised, but I think one of the things I learned from Florida is like, it's okay to be weird. Now, don't be like zombie weird and do so much meth that you try to eat someone's face. Like, even for us, I mean, we've done that, but even for us, that's a little much. But learning to appreciate the off-kilter and bizarre, I think I got a lot from being born and raised in Florida. What's your favorite book? Oh, it's such a good question and a hard one. All of these are good. Oh, I'm sorry, Autumn. I skipped yours. I didn't mean to. I just scrolled too fast. I'm going to do Autumn's, then I'll do Mina's. What challenges have you found in regards to writing for the stage that has been specific to the form? Oh, girl. So I like to say, and I know other writers will dispute this, and that's okay, because I have my glass of wine in my mug, so it looks like I'm drinking tea. So it's all good. But I think that in regards to writing for the stage, you have to write for two different audiences that are taking in your art in two different ways, right? You have to write it for the reading audience as a type of literature that can be understood on the page. And then you have to write it for a viewing audience that's understood on the page. And those are they're understood on the stage. And those are two very different audiences who take in cues and character development and story in very different ways. And so because you have to write in both modes at the same time, I think it's one of the more challenging forms of writing. And it's one of the reasons that, like, for say in our workshop here at ASC, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, but in our workshop, we don't just write it, we write it and then we put it in the air. Because there are some pieces of work that you write it and it sounds beautiful on the page and you put it in the air and it dies on its feet, right? And vice versa. And so it's learning how to make both of those happen at the same times. And it's one of the reasons that I think new play development is so different than any other form of developing writing, because you can workshop it on the page all you want, but you have to have the component of whether it's friends reading it or fellow classmates reading it, putting it in the air. Because at the end of the day, no matter how pretty it looks on the page or sounds on the page, if it doesn't work in the air, then it doesn't work. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge. It's a great question. What is your favorite book? What was your first favorite book? Oh, those lovely questions. So I have to say that my favorite books change, but I will say right now, for where I am in your life, where I am in my life, one of my favorite books is probably For the Relief of Unbearable Urges, by Nathaniel Englander, which I read recently. And I think it's also because I so deeply appreciate the short story form, which I am not good at. I have tried many a times and learned a lot about myself as a writer, but I'm not good at it. So I really appreciate kind of the well-turned short story. And I was blown away by that collection recently. I'm very excited. I just ordered Obit on the recommendation of the reading last night. And I'm so excited to get Chang's Obit. It should be at home when I get home. So I'm really excited to read that as well right now. That's my new read, which should be waiting when I get off the plane. Thanks for asking. Oh, and what was my first favorite book? Oh my God, I'm such a narcissist. When I was little, so probably Winnie the Pooh. I loved all the Pooh stories. I was Pooh for life. Like watched all the Disney cartoons. I made my parents read all the stories to me, you know, the original British stories. My parents were like, I don't know what this word is. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's British. It's a foreign language. Keep going. You know, it was fun. But I have to say, one of the things I loved to do was I would draw stories on a page, you know, and different stories, and then make my mom, because I couldn't write yet, make my mom write out the story underneath. And I would carry those around. And my mom's like, you were so annoying. You wouldn't leave the house without them for a while. But I would carry around my little books. And then people would be like, it's story time. And I would be like, got one for ya. And I would force people to read my own books. So I was a narcissist from the age of like 3. And I loved to force people to read my own stories. Which my mother did not keep any of them. I'm like, how could you not keep that? She's like, because they were fucking annoying. It's like, thanks, Mom. Floridian, right there. But the Winnie the Poohs, there was something, it was so magical to go on those adventures. They were great. Is there a movement for theater performances to become more universally accessible? Great question, Sophia. And yes, as a matter of fact, so I'm going to compress all this information in a very short answer. But if you want to read more, howlround.com, and I'll put it in the chat. Howlround.com has done an entire essay series on accessibility in theater and accessibility in a lot of different ways. So if you want to go and look for a more thorough conversation, it should be there. If you can't find it, let me know. But it should be pretty easy to find on their website because they have topic tags. But yes, there is an absolutely movement towards more accessibility, both in terms of like, are there ways we can convince unions to keep letting us show work online, right? The biggest challenge to showing work online is that the actors union doesn't know how to scale that pay for their actors. And the film actors union gets really nervous about what's a film and what's theater. So, however, because of COVID, the unions have kind of been forced to really tackle this head on finally. And so they've started to create contracts that will allow for streaming, like we're doing with the arsonists, but also for streaming of things like the Met, right? And the National Theater and the Kennedy Center. The project I'm doing at the Kennedy Center this fall, I've written an adaptation of Madeleine L'Engle's A Wind in the Door, which is the follow-up to A Wrinkle in Time. And we're going to do 1 week of live performances. They're going to tape all those performances, edit them together, and then they're going to sell tickets for online screenings. So we're going to be able to reach so many more people with that model. And so I'm really hoping that that model or other models, multiple models, take off, because it would be great for accessibility. Also, in terms of like when you're talking about physically challenged or physically disabled, depending on what terminology you use, there's been a move towards making sure there's at least one live performance with sign language, one live performance that has a touch before and after component for people who are blind. There are now autism showings specifically that lights go up, the sounds are taken down for people with autism. So I'm really excited about the multitude of ways accessibility is being broached. And there are some brilliant theater folks that have written about it on HowlRound. So I hope you enjoy those articles. Thank you, Sophie. Sarah's out there. Hey, Sarah. I'm so glad you're here. And I know Amy and Saeed are out there. Hey, Amy and Saeed. Remember when I used to sneak you into Amy's dorm room at ASC? We don't have to do that anymore because we're old. Awesome. Other questions? We just have a few minutes left. What is my writing process like? Oh, hi, entire Ahmed family. It's good. I'm so glad you're watching. I miss you. What is my writing process like? Great question, Dina. For me, I usually need to write the first draft alone. Like usually for a first draft, now that I have a family, I find a writer's residency or I book a cheap hotel for a week. Like for the first draft, because there's so many options when you're facing a blank page, that I usually take notes for a little bit and just kind of pick up crumbs and pieces and put it in a notebook. And then when I'm ready to write a first draft, find a place where I can have solitude and be by myself with all the stuff coming out of my brain and write. I usually write a really fast first draft and then I put it away. So like Bottlefly, I wrote the first draft of in a 10-day residency at Yaddo. Like I just sat down and wrote 15 pages a day. But then I like to put it in a drawer for a little bit because I have no perspective on my work after the first draft is done. When I type the end on a first draft, I am convinced I should win the Pulitzer Prize. Like I'm just like, right? Like I think I'm Beyonce, y'all. It's crazy. I know somewhere in the back of my head that I'm not, but like all the endorphins you get from finishing a draft, they're all there. They're all there. And so then I put it away. And then in about a month or 6 weeks later, when this is, pre-COVID, I make a big dinner and invite a bunch of friends over who I know like literature and who are kind. And I serve them dinner and we eat and we talk and we drink. And then we just sit around my living room and we read it. They're not some are actors, but many are not. It's just, as I said, getting the words in the air. So I have a chance when I sit down to write my second draft. I've seen the words in the page. I've heard how the words are starting to function in the air. Then I can pick the best parts of that. And I actually sit down for draft 2 with a blank page. And I start a new first scene. I keep pieces that I like from the old draft. I may copy and paste some segments in. But for the most part, I start again with a blank page for draft 2. And what I find and why that works for me is because I found that naturally the good stuff starts to be sifted and the good stuff rises to the top, and the stuff that's not working, it may be bad or it may be really good, it may just not be for this play, goes to the bottom. But then every day when I write, I save it as the title and that day's date. So I have every draft of every script. I'm never worried about losing anything. If I need to go back and get something, it's not gone. And then starting about the third draft is when I actually start to look at, okay, can we get some actors and do this on a stage? That's one of the things that Agnes Scott afforded me, is that because we have that space that's just perfect for new work, I would, once I had drafts, I would just get the key. Dudley would give me the keys. I don't know if he was supposed to do that, but Dudley would give me the keys and we would just go in and mess around for 3 or 4 hours. And they would read stuff. And then when things weren't and then there were some times where I didn't know what was supposed to go next. So I'd have a scene title that said, something goes here. And I would write sparkles and unicorns ensue, right? And we'd have student actors improv that out. But being able to get it on its feet anytime I needed to was hugely important because, as I said, it has to work both ways. If it doesn't, it has to work on page and on stage for people to do it. So that is my basic process. And then starting around draft 3, I will not start from a blank page again. I usually start with the chunks that work and start really rearranging. There was a famous French author, and I apologize, I can't remember his name right now, but he, in the Paris Review, he was being interviewed and he said, nothing is ever finished. You only give up on it. And that's kind of like what it is. There comes a point where you have to stop, but because art is subjective, you could work on it forever if you wanted. And probably kill yourself because that would drive people crazy. But it's never finished. You just let it go at some point. Thank you for asking. David, mention some. Okay, so David asked, have you ever considered something relentlessly gonzo a la Carl Hyacin? Here's the thing. Unless you're doing camp on stage, I found it doesn't play as well. Because it starts to, there's this line, right, where things are bad before they're camp. And I've never been able to write something that's so gonzo that it wasn't bad, right? And I'm not great at writing camp. I love people who can. I love going to see it. So I haven't figured that out yet. But I would say I would watch Carl Hyacin's books being read on stage by drag queens any day of the week. Any day, take my money. I want that ticket. It'd be great. Oh my God. Thank you for saying I'm definitely Beyonce. There's no one like the queen, but I am so grateful that you would say that. Thank you. What are the trade-offs when we substitute videos for live theater? Huge difference. No. Yes, I probably don't need to call you Professor Thompson anymore, but I feel moved to, so I'm going to. Yes, absolutely. There are huge differences for videos for that a video of a show versus a live show. Absolutely. They are not at all the same beast. And often the better the live show is, it translates less well to video. Luckily, what people like the Met and other folks who've been streaming have found is that even though the streaming is not a substitute for live shows, it does get people interested in the form and will bring them to the live show. So it's not as if people will, TCG did a marketing survey 4 or 5 years ago, actually. It's not that people will not buy tickets to the live show. It's that they'll stream it to see if it's something they're interested in. And then if they do have a chance to buy a ticket for a live production, they will. So unlike what we previously thought, which was that if we streamed everything live, no one would come in, because the experiences are so different, the marketing survey from Theater Communications Group showed that actually the streaming, even the basic streaming people were doing, this was pre-COVID, was helping raise interest in the arts for people who couldn't get to live work. And this was primarily in the world of opera, but they made some assumptions moving it to the world of theater. And so what I'm hoping is that because there's been so much live work online, that just like a concert film for a band, or anything like that, that what we're doing is kind of feeding this latent hunger for live theater, that when we can come back together, more people will be buying tickets instead of less. So we'll just have to see. But I think it can be great as a marketing tool. It's definitely not a substitute. I agree. There are, however, some cool, if you're interested in live online experiences right now at Theater Exile in Philadelphia, just theaterexile.com, they're running something called Zoo Family or something. And it's an interactive card game live theater show. Like, so if you're looking for just fun things to do during COVID, there's some theater artists that are developing these shows. They'll probably never be done again. But like, there's one from the Geffen Playhouse where they send you a box of stuff and you build something with along with the story online and then show it at the end. So I have enjoyed seeing what people have come up with. Whether or not it stays, it may not need to stay, but it's very fun. Thank you for asking. Right, Miss Nicole, I think we're at time.
I think we are. We are so grateful for you. This is just such a treat, and having you here and teaching the class, and you know, we're honored, 3 times lucky this year, and you know, what a wonderful way to conclude the live synchronous events of our festival this year. So thank you, Jackie. I will share my screen with my thank you slides on our way out. I hope that you all have enjoyed this Agnes Scott Writers Festival, and we hope that you enjoy the Georgia premiere of The Arsonists, streaming now. I know we're all doing this weekend. So thank you to all of you for being here, and this long list of thank yous is playing, but what a wonderful way to finish out the week of events and commemorate the 50th annual Agnes Scott Writers Festival. Thanks to all of you. There's a lot of love in the chat. Take care, everyone.